Good evening. You are watching the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. First, the headlines. Oman Gas Company signs a renewed concession contract with the government of the Sultanate for 50 years. The Ministry of Education starts tomorrow the project to classify private schools based on scientific and educational standards. And the Arab Monetary Fund expects the Sultanate's economic growth is to reach 2.8% during the current year. Those were the headlines. Now for the news in detail. Oman Gas Company, the national gas transporter, signed a renewed concession agreement with the government of Oman for 50 years. Based on a new revenue framework, the agreement renewed the license for the company to appropriate and operate the gas transportation network system, including gas pipelines and measuring facilities, as well as gathering and compressor with a new revenue framework. The new framework restructured the gas sector by applying tariffs on operational costs on gas transportation through the network and redefined the relation between Oman Gas Company, Ministry of Oil and Gas, and relevant gas producers and users. The application of the new framework will adopt regulatory asset-based system which complies with the international best practices and will fall under the supervision of the Authority for Electricity Regulation. Ministry of Education will start tomorrow with a new project to offer an impartial system to classify private schools based on scientific and educational standards to determine the quality of services and performance offered to their students. The evaluation stems its principles from His Majesty Sultan Qaboos' speeches and the National Education Policy 2040 and the Private School Bylaw. The classification will address 7 areas: leadership and governance, school environment education and learning, health, safety and security, values and citizenship, community contribution, and finally, school financial standing. The classification tools were submitted for review to 22 institutions and reviewers, including Ministry of Education, Ministry of Higher Education, Council of Sultan Qaboos University, Research Council, Oman Academic Accreditation Authority, College of Sharia Sciences, and Universal Schools. The Public Establishment for Industrial Estate Madayan and Business Gate International Company signed an agreement for implementing and developing suppliers management system via Internet. Through the system, the companies can register via their website and their registration certificates are issued electronically. The system will enable to search for registered companies and approved materials in addition to a specified private list for small and medium-sized enterprises and those companies which are classified. The Arab Monetary Fund reported that the Sultanate's economic growth rate is expected to reach 2.8% in 2019. The inflation rate in the Sultanate of Oman is expected to rise from 1.6% in 2017 to 3% in 2019. This came as a result of policies pursued to diversify production, stimulate private sector investment, improve the business environment, and boost the competitiveness. Meanwhile, the global economy is expected to grow by 3.9% in 2019. This is according to the projections of the International Monetary Fund. The growth rate of developed economies is projected to grow by 2.2% during the current year. Still to come on News Bulletin. Lake Victoria on the Kenyan side is covered by hyacinth plant, which affects the fish reproduction and fishermen see their catches evaporate. Welcome back to the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. The U.S. diplomat leading talks with the Taliban said he hoped to see a peace deal in place before Afghanistan's July presidential elections, though he cautioned he didn't trust America's longtime adversary. Zalmay Khalilzad, a former ambassador to Afghanistan who has spoken extensively with the Taliban in recent weeks, also stressed that any U.S. troop withdrawal would be dependent on conditions on the ground and not on any particular timetable. The talks come as President Donald Trump pushes to end the Afghanistan conflict, where about 14,000 U.S. troops are still deployed and which has seen countless thousands of civilian and military deaths. Khalilzad told an audience at the U.S. Institute of Peace in Washington that the timing of the peace settlement from their point of view is the sooner the better. Khalilzad has in recent months held multiple meetings with Taliban officials in Qatar, where the group's senior leaders have an office in the capital of Doha. The Venezuelan military loyal to the embattled President Nicolas Maduro continue to block the bridge where humanitarian aid is stationed. Dozens of volunteers prepared sacks of rice, canned tuna, and protein-rich biscuits for malnourished children at the warehouse on the Colombian border yesterday, as Venezuela's opposition vowed to deliver the U.S. humanitarian aid to their troubled nation, even if it means mounting a mass mobilization of their countrymen to carry it in. A large truck was blocking the Canadian bridge in Urena and Takira State, and armed soldiers were stationed. As the food and hygiene kits were packed into individual bags in the city of Cucura, just across the river from Venezuela, U.S. officials and Venezuelan opposition leaders appealed to the military to let the aid through. U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will meet for the second much-anticipated summit in Hanoi, as preparations kick into high gear for the peace talks. Trump announced that it will take place in Hanoi, Vietnam on February 27th and 28th. The U.S. State Department said that the special U.S. envoy for North Korea will meet again with Pyongyang officials ahead of the Trump-Kim talks, hours after he returned to Seoul from talks in the north on the summit agenda. The State Department confirmed that the U.S. envoy agreed to meet his North Korean counterpart again before the leaders' talks. Thousands of Sydney homes were without power today after severe storms hit Australia's largest city, causing transport holdups, vehicles with floodwater, and delaying a national football match. Heavy rains and lightning storms lashed parts of Sydney, with close to 60 millimeters of rain falling in some areas. Energy companies reported that more than 40,000 customers were affected by the power outages at the peak of the storm overnight, with more than 5,000 still without power early today. Kenyan fishermen in the Lake Victoria region are seeing a decrease in the size of their catches. One reason for this is the invasion of a thick green carpet of water hyacinth in Kizomba Bay. This vegetation is blocking Kenya's main entry to Africa's largest lake, hitting the local economy hard as fishermen struggle to get out of the water. More details on the following report.
Nets piled into their wooden boats, these fishermen are ready to set sail as the sun sets on Africa's largest lake. But once again, a thick green carpet of water hyacinth clogs Kisumu Bay, blocking the fishermen from reaching the deep waters to fish.
We are suffering because as we are unable to go out and fish, we are unable to get food.
Hyacinth is a floating aquatic plant native to South America, but it's become a global freshwater scourge after being inadvertently transported worldwide. It's believed to have first reached Lake Victoria in the 1990s, floating down the lake's western tributary, the Kagera. Since then, it has seriously hampered fishing boats and other vessels on Lake Victoria.
Many of our colleagues have had problems on the lake while fishing. They get stuck there. In the recent past, we've had cases where some fishermen got stuck on the lake, and the Kenyan government had to send a chopper to rescue them.
Lake Victoria is shared with Tanzania and Uganda, but on the Kenyan side alone, hyacinth covers roughly 5% of the water's surface. The plant affects fish reproduction, and fishermen are seeing their catches evaporate.
In the Victoria, the fish was small because there are some weeds in the Victoria. So it forced some people to bring fish from China and some to bring from cages because the demand of fish was high, but the supply was low.
At the market in Kisumu, the gap between local demand and the lake's supply is filled by frozen tilapia fillets, imported from China. But these were banned by the president last year, a ban yet to be enacted. According to experts, this will only worsen the supply-side deficit between Kenya's fish production of about 140,000 tonnes and the population's demand of about 500,000 tonnes.
Under the auspices of His Excellency Dr. Ali bin Talib al-Hanai, Under-Secretary of Planning Affairs at the Ministry of Health, the 5th course on lipid metabolism and cardiovascular risk commenced. More details on the following report by Abdullah bin Ahmed al-Rubai.
4-day course in lipid metabolism and cardiovascular risk commenced its sessions last night. The course, of which is being participated by over 30 clinicians from MENA region, will focus on increasing the knowledge and experience of early to mid-career practicing clinicians who manage patients with lipid disorders. During the opening ceremony, a number of speeches were presented from the UZLA president, experts in lipid metabolism, and the founder of Oman Cancer Association.
This workshop is dedicated to young physicians who are gaining knowledge in the field of lipidology. One of the topics that we emphasize on is familial hypercholesteremia, and it's a genetic disorder characterized by increased amount of cholesterol in the blood, leading to premature coronary disease and death if it's not treated. One of the most important messages they want to give to the physicians and the public is trying to identify people with high cholesterol in the blood and trying to prevent the disease from occurring. This will lead to normalizing of life expectancy and prevention of disease.
Cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death and diseases in every country of the world. Contributions to the education of atherosclerosis and its interventions may help reduce the risk of atherosclerosis and cardiovascular disease.
This is the 5th IAS OSLA Lipid course event in Oman, and we are proud that with the collaboration with the International Atherosclerosis Society and the Sultan Qaboos University Hospital to hold this event in Oman. This event is for training physicians from the Middle East and North Africa on the management and treatment of hypercholesteremia. The other successful win for the Oman Society of Lipid and Atherosclerosis is holding the International Atherosclerosis Symposium 2021 and 2024.
The Oman Society of Lipid and Atherosclerosis OSLA, in collaboration with International Atherosclerosis Society IAS, have made the course accessible to the Middle East and North Africa, MENA, and this one is held here, is the 5th course on lipid metabolism and cardiovascular risk, organized by both OSLA and IAS.
Cardiovascular diseases, myocardial infarction and strokes are the main cause of death in the MENA region, and actually there's an unmet need on the control of these risk factors that cause this disease. Basically, this course here in Oman is a course for young physicians in order to increase their knowledge, improve their knowledge, and empower them in order to control the risk factors and prevent the cardiovascular complications in the region.
It's worth mentioning that the Sultanate will host International Atherosclerosis Symposium in 2021 and 2024. Oman Society of Lipid Atherosclerosis advocate for quality patient care concerning lipid disorders and atherosclerosis through education, research promotion, development and application of standards and guidelines to influence healthcare policy. So far has covered 165 clinicians from different parts of the Middle East and North Africa. Abdullah bin Ahmed al-Rubi'i, Sultanate of Oman Television, Muscat.
After days full of activities and events targeted various segments of the society, Muscat Festival 2019 is to be concluded today in its 21st round, which was launched on the 10th of January. Muscat Festival is considered as one of the popular tourism attractions in the Sultanate, where the festival sites received more than 700,000 visitors from various GCC countries and other world countries. Youth talents gathered in the Gulf College and the Governorate of Muscat to participate in a theater competition with a participation from local clubs. The competition is organized by the Ministry of Sports Affairs as part of the annual competition under the theme Youth Creativity to nurture young talents and provide a platform for them to compete and excel. Now for the general weather forecast around the Sultanate. Clear skies will prevail over most of the governorates with chances of low clouds and fog late at night and early morning over the coasts of the Arabian Sea. Winds will be southeasterly to south light to moderate. Seas will be slight with a maximum wave height of 1 meter. This is the Sultanate of Oman Television. Before we end tonight's news bulletin, here are the main points once again. Oman Gas Company signed a renewed concession contract with the government of the Sultanate for 50 years. The Ministry of Education starts tomorrow the project to classify private schools based on scientific and educational standards. And the Arab Monetary Fund expects the Sultanate's economy growth is to reach 2.8% during the current year. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin. From all of us here at the newsroom and the studios, thank you for watching and have a great night.